Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast. This is a Monday. I gotta restart.
Is that like the first time that's ever happened?
Actually, we're keeping that. Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast. This is a Monday minute episode, which are shorter and more informal episodes where we answer your listener questions. As you may have just heard, Jakey is here. Steve is not here. So it's just the two of us. Speaking of the two of us, Jake, what's going on today as this episode is released?
What's going on right now when this episode was released? It means the Black Friday sale is live.
Boom.
Go get you a pack.
Yeah. So if you
I was
call,
going to say,
it's
oh,
going to be
go
either
ahead.
Jake or I probably answering the phone, but we're pre-recording this on the Friday before because we know that Monday is going to be one of the busiest days of the year. So an advanced good luck to you, Jake.
Thank you. Yeah, March 28th was the busiest so far when we released K4.
Was that the
Um,
specific launch date?
oh yeah.
I don't even
Oh yeah.
remember.
And then there was definitely some days in August that were just pretty crazy. It was when you were gone, Steve was
Are
gone, and
you
Pat
trying
was
to throw
gone.
me
Like,
under the
oh,
bus?
no, you were no, not at all. But I'm just saying it was definitely a busy one. So I'm definitely well prepared for what today, quote unquote, is going to be like.
Yeah. I was going to ask you to tell the sales, to tell the details of the sale. But speaking of throwing people under the bus for being gone hunting, you've been out hunting all week, this past week. Do you even know what's going on for the sale, or can you tell us?
I'll give it to you.
Okay. So it's gonna be 10% off site wide. So all new K4 pack systems, pack accessories, logo gear, remaining K3 inventory, etc. 10% off site wide. Essentially, as we said, starting now, so November 20th. That discount will be automatically applied at checkout. So you won't see the sale price on the product page, but as you add items to your cart and checkout, it's going to take 10% off of your total. It will last for a limited time. We don't know how long of a limited time that will be. We essentially have a certain amount of our inventory that we can sell at that sale price. And so essentially, when we get near that point, we're going to have to stop the sale. Definitely don't anticipate it's going to sell out in minutes or hours or anything like that. But I would just say that if you're hearing this on Monday, hopefully into Tuesday, it'll still be going on. Maybe after that, I have no idea. But if you're hearing this like days and days after it's released and you go to our website and you don't see a sale, it's probably because the sale's over. So hopefully don't delay if you're interested. If you do have any questions, just let us know. Send us an email, give us a call. And if you hopefully are signed up for our emails, you would have gotten notified about this. And we will do kind of a last call email before the sale ends. So that's the nitty gritty. Won't bore you with more, but yeah, give us a shout if you have any questions. And you'll probably talk to Jake and myself.
I love it.
All right. You're back from a hunt last week. We talked briefly before your
Yeah,
hunt
we
that
haven't
you're
talked in
doing.
like 2 weeks,
I know. Well, I was gonna say we
technically.
talked on the podcast. I think it was a Monday Minute. We talked about you going whitetail hunting, right? We mentioned that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you guys were going to Kodiak, then I didn't talk to you, and then you guys got back, and then that's when I was going whitetail hunting. So
Yeah. We virtual high
it's
fived as I was coming back from
yes.
Kodiak and you were leaving to go whitetail hunting. I don't here's what I know. You sent me a photo and you shot a buck. That's about all I know. So I'm right here
Mic
with the
drop.
listeners. I want to hear more about the trip, how things went down. We talked before, it was like your first time hunting from a tree stand, first time hunting whitetail. Like, I think
Yeah.
there's some stuff to pull. So I don't know where to start because I don't know the story. But
Yeah, absolutely. I know we talked just a little bit yesterday, and I was like, you know what? Let's just tell you the story tomorrow or today. That way, it's kind of your reaction is going to be natural, and you don't have to fake it for the listeners. Yeah, so we headed out Saturday morning early. We went up just to go hunt whitetail with a good buddy of my dad's, and yeah, he's a whitetail junkie through and through. So my dad and I we've never hunted whitetail before. Not that we haven't been interested in it before. It's just, we're so accustomed to hunting mule deer. So this was a whole new change for us, just doing something completely different, sitting tree stands. That's I have a great appreciation for people who have the patience and have the skill for tree stand, which I'll get to. But yeah, I mean, just jumping right into it. Saturday, we got there around, I don't know, noon. It was just like a little deer camp. It wasn't like any special backcountry hunt type deal. So we brought the trailer and everything, and we went straight out to it. Got on the first stand, and just a little bit of a backstory. I know my dad's going to be okay with me saying this, but like he's he's very cautious or aware of heights. Like he just doesn't like heights,
That
and
was
I get a
very
little bit of
PC. You don't have a
that.
fear of heights. You have a height awareness or caution. I like
I'm
that.
just trying to I'm just trying to be as polite as possible.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I will say like those tree stands are buddy sets, and he has them up high, and that's just because I mean, he gets it done. He kills big whitetail every year, so he's definitely doing something right. But anyways, ever since I was a kid, I knew my dad just had a little just didn't like heights, and I was the same way. I'm not as bad. I could do a little bit more stuff like that. Like roller coasters don't affect me, affects him type deal. But the first night we got dropped off into separate stands and we all got up fine and everything. It was actually the wind was ripping pretty hard that night. And so you just feel that tree sway left and right. It started to just kind of like make you grip the tree stand and you're like, what's going to happen if this tree quote unquote broke? But I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So while we're in the tree stand, we have service. So we're just, we would text each other like any luck or seeing anything. So that first night, I actually had a great, it was super cool. Like you got settled in and once you get settled in after like 30 minutes, all of a sudden just the whole forest just comes alive. And it's so cool because they don't see you. No animals see you. They can't smell you. And you just have like this aerial image of just everything that's going on. And it's pretty unique. So yeah, there was a spike that came in and my gosh, he just gave me the most amazing shot at like 15 yards. I think I sent you the video
Yeah, you
in our
did.
group chat yeah. And he just gave me just the most amazing quartering away shot and was just standing there for forever. And I had 5 days. So we got there Saturday. We had till Wednesday afternoon. And I was like, man, like if I'm here for just like that's a second day or a third day buck, but like first day, there's got to be something else. And I'm not saying I'm not grateful to shoot a spike because I mean we're meat hunters, and also experienced hunters. But I was just like, let's let this guy walk, and so it was cool just to kind of see him do what he did. And later on, like a doe and a fawn came through, and that was that. The next day, we went up early in the morning to another spot. We just kept moving from stand to stand. So we went the next morning into a different spot, and that was a spooky stand situation. This one was basically like half the seat was basically like just torn away, and a lot of it was just like paracord rope kind of, and so your butt is like half on it, half off of it. But our buddy Mike, when he sits a tree stand, he doesn't sit; he just stands in it. And I think that's most tree stand hunters or most experienced hunters do is they stand in a tree stand so that way you just get numerous shot angles and stuff like that. For me, being a brand new guy, just getting familiar with it, I kid you not, we're 30 feet up in the air. Like he sets his stands 30 feet up in the air, and I'll show you a picture later, but they're up high. And so when you're climbing that thing and pitch black early in the morning, it's cold. I don't know, man. It's just you definitely be aware because you don't want to make the wrong step or anything like that. But so that was I wouldn't say it rattled me, but mm, it definitely made me aware. And so I finally get up there, and it took me a while to kind of get acclimated to it. I'm like, whoa, like you're looking down below you, ready to rope up your bow, and you just feel kind of off centered. I don't know, man. You just kind of get a little bit dizzy. So I ended up getting it up there and sat the stand again, and another like 30 minutes later, a 1 point came through, not a spike, just a 1 point
Like
came
a
through. I'm like, are you
one-sided
kidding?
spike.
Like a one-sided spike. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's getting worse and worse. So I let him walk again. And so it wasn't that eventful. Like the first two sits, so the evening and then the next morning, those weren't super, eventful at all. But it was great to just kind of get familiar with sit and stand and doing all of that. So that definitely kept me busy, kept me focused and awake. Um, my dad actually on the other end, that next morning when I climbed up that sketchy stand, he ended up just calling it. And he knew he was going to probably do this at one point. And so he ended up bringing his own blind. And so he sat a blind, or set up a blind right below his tree stand spot. And so he did that for the rest of the hunts. And I don't blame him. Like, if he doesn't feel comfortable, or, feels like he's putting himself in a, bad spot, like, you definitely don't want to do that. So that was the first morning. Definitely slow the first two sits, and we relocate completely to a completely different spot. And again, we kind of split off in all three separate ways. And Mike had set me up on this one tree stand, and it was actually the most safest, I should say. Like, the ladder goes all the way up, but the stand was probably the highest. And that one was just like, oh my gosh, it was just unreal. I'm like, wow, these tree stand guys definitely are, uh, they're tough. It's hats off to you guys, whoever sits tree stands as high as that. So it took me a little bit just to kind of be like, all right, like, tie up your bow, tie up the pack so you can get it ready to, bring it up. I didn't want to hike up or, climb up that tree stand with a pack on. I'm just not there yet, not experienced enough to do so. But the biggest thing is, once you get to that last ladder set, there's nothing above the stand. All you have to grab is the stand. So it's that transition that got me the most. Just lifting your leg up, getting up there, getting your safety harness wrapped around the tree. It was just like that series of events is the one that like kind of got me a lot. So this stand, I climbed up, then climbed back down, climbed up, back down, and then finally on the third one, I finally got up into the stand. I was just trying to get acclimated, man. It was just,
Really.
again, something, yeah,
It's
completely
so
completely
funny
new.
how, I don't know, something I mean, I guess I remember having that like anxiety or getting used to it, but that was years and years and years ago. It's something I haven't thought about in a long time. So it's just funny to hear your perspective on, yeah, how weird it is to climb up and get in a tree stand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually, I did think about it, and you definitely, I sure we've talked about this numerous times on the pod before, but just putting yourself in an uncomfortable spot. And now I wasn't trying to push myself to put myself in a dangerous spot, because again, like, you don't want to make a bad step and fall. Like, that would definitely stink. But I was just like, man, like, you can do this. Just
Yeah.
get ready for it. Like, just
Well,
keep trying.
and on one hand, it's like, okay, it's just a tree stand, no big deal. Like, not, but people die climbing tree
Yeah,
stands or falling from tree. Like, it is something you do have to just not, like, especially when you're new to it, make assumptions about or be careless about. You do have to be thoughtful with what you're doing because,
right.
yeah, people die, people get paralyzed, etc. It's
Yeah.
falling from 20 plus feet is no joke.
Exactly, man. Like, that actually just happened here in Idaho. I heard some story through Rob, like somebody found another person, who fell out of a tree stand. So, yeah, you want to be aware and cautious. But anyways, it was just, putting yourself in an uncomfortable spot, something that I've never done before. And so I finally get up there, and I actually just sat in the stand for a little bit, and I ended up bringing my bow and my pack up there, and I got used to it after a little bit. And I was like, you know what, like, it's more, I think, just a mental battle with myself, just kind of getting over that hump of just being okay with it. Once you get your harness tied in and you're all good to go, like, knock on wood, nothing's gonna, like, more than likely nothing's gonna happen. And then once you're up there, and you've just got just this amazing aerial image of everything, all of the shooting lanes, and um, with that, it's just super thick country. So sitting on the ground versus being up high, I mean, that's just two different, two different things. Like, you just get so much view of everything that's going around you when you're up there. So I sat it for, I don't know, about an hour. And all of a sudden I was like, man, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna lower my gear down, lower my bow, lower my pack, go to the bathroom. I'm just gonna eat a little bit of a snack. And so I set my Exo on. I just stand it up straight and I lean it up against the ladder of the tree, or basically the ladder. And so I lean that up. So I basically use my pack as like a sit pad. So I'm kind of elevated. I'm literally like sitting in a chair almost. And so I have like all my puffy. It's like 60 degrees out. It was pretty warm at that time. I think it was like 3:30, and so the sun was kind of beating right on my face. So I was able to put like my big whitetail jacket in my pack to kind of give me a little bit of a cushion. So I decided to eat a little bit of food, and honestly, I'm glad I did this. But I set my bow to the side, but I knock an arrow. And I was just like, I'm going to be here for at least 20 minutes. I was in no rush to get back into the stand because I don't want to push myself or be, in a hurry or anything like that. So once I'm ready, I'll go up there. But for the meantime, I'll just have my arrow knocked in my bow. Dude, I kid you not. Like 15 minutes later, I was eating some food and I was actually I was having an almond roca. Those are like my favorite things, favorite candies ever.
What
And I
is
was
it?
on
I
my
don't even know
last
what that
one.
is.
An almond roca. It's like chocolate covered toffee. Yeah, chocolate covered toffee with like, nuts sprinkled over it or whatever. Oh, it's
Huh.
so good. It's definitely, you definitely need to try it, but that's not the point. The point is, I'm sitting there and I'm eating this, and all of a sudden I hear some leaves crunch right in front of me. And I was like, I look up, I go, no way. And I see a deer, and I can see it through the thick brush. And all of a sudden this deer's feeding to me, and I couldn't tell if it was a buck or a doe. And then finally, it comes in another 10 yards and I can see it's a legit buck. And I'm like, holy cow, this is actually happening. So I grab my bow immediately, and I don't have enough time to really get, nervous or excited or shaky. Cause I just know like, all right, I'm looking at all the lanes that he could possibly come through. And when the best time is to draw my bow. Granted, the wind is coming at my face, and that's the thing that helped me the most, obviously, because if not, and that wind was going at my back, I think that buck would have definitely spooked. But anyways, he was out at like 70 yards, ends up closing the distance, and he's about like 30 at this point. And I see like one bush, the last bush that I can draw my bow back without disturbing anything. And so I pull my bow back and I'm anchored, ready to go. And he's still just kind of working his way to me. And it's kind of like in a pinch point. So by the time he, gives me a shot opportunity, this guy's going to be close. Well, sure as heck, man. He comes feeding through, and he's not in any hurry, not spooking or anything like that, just on a little stroll basically. And it's like 345, 350 at this point. And all of a sudden he kind of turns and heads directly at me. And there's like a little dip into the terrain. I'm talking like 2 foot dip, and kind of like comes back up. And all of a sudden he's looking directly at me frontal at 15 yards. And I'm sitting on the ground, literally leaning on my pack, or sitting on my pack, leaning on the tree, full draw. Sun is just right in my face. And I'm like, all right, like I sighted in for 20, 30, 40 because I knew it was only going to be, close shots, and those whitetail are definitely jumpy. So I've heard. And yeah, man, I just have a good shot. I kind of aim low. I knew right where kind of the vitals would be. And I just had my finger over the trigger and just pull back. Boom, right directly into the chest, or in that chest area. And I knew when I shot, I could see through my housing. I could immediately see, red, but I knew immediately like that's dead center. Left and right was perfect, but I couldn't tell quite what the elevation was like, if I was too high or too low. So it sounded like an archery target, like my arrow was hitting an archery target. It was just a thwack. So he ran off, and then immediately the shakes started happening. Like, holy cow, like that actually just happened. And that's just a lesson, like total quick tangent. That's just a lesson. Like, be ready no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I was not even prepared to shoot anything. Well, granted, I had my bow ready, but I didn't think that could have happened. So I went over there real quick, right where I shot him, and I see my arrow, and I was like, oh, great. And I look, and there's no blood, no nothing, but it's broken off. And there was so basically what was left, there was about 8 inches of arrow in him. So I have, the rest of the arrow that's not bloody or anything like that. And I'm like, dang, like what happened? Did I get enough penetration? Where did I hit? Did I hit a bone? I knew I definitely hit some bone because it was just a loud thwack. But anyways, I only went like another 15 yards and I didn't find any blood. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to give him some time. and it gets dark around like 5:15. So I gave him about 45 minutes to an hour. And the other guys, my dad and Mike, came over to me and we went and looked for him. 50 yards from where I shot, finally we see a pin drop of blood. And by then, man, I'm sick. I'm not sick to my stomach, but I'm bumming. I'm like, man, like what happened? Like, where did I shoot? No blood, or not as much blood as I was hoping. And we finally go another like 10 yards, so we're at 75 yards from where I hit him at this point. And then all of a sudden you've got one pile of blood, take another 3 steps, another pile of blood, and then you take another 3 steps and boom, he's right there. I was like, holy smokes. And he was just dead. Basically, so I'm shooting a 7.75 inch titanium. So it's an expandable, great broadhead, flies great. And that thing, I hit him right in the sternum and it cut right through the sternum and into his heart. So I didn't get that much of a blood trail, but that thing, I mean, he died 80 yards from where I shot him. He just tucked away in brush and I didn't hear him crash or anything like that. But yeah, I'm sure he was dead in 20 seconds after I shot, but I was smart. I definitely wanted to make sure to give him some time just in case, it was a bad shot or something like that, which I didn't think it was. But yeah,
Dude,
we ended up finding him and that was that.
I had no idea that's how it all went down. How wild.
Yeah, it was cool, man. And so we ended up just, taking some pictures, put them on the game cart, took them back, took them away, and skinned them basically outside of that area. Mike's very cautious about where you're skinning them, where you're gutting them and stuff like that. So that was definitely a chore. I think putting them in a pack would have been way easier. I feel like it's a sin saying I didn't pack them out working for a pack company.
Uh,
But
and
yeah, man, it was super cool. Go ahead.
he's a solid what do you want to call it? 3x3, Jake?
Well, whitetail guys call them an eight point. I was like, it's a solid 3 point. And Mike's like,
With eye
nope, that's an eight
guards.
point. Yeah. Yeah. A great buck, man. Like first
Yeah,
archery
it is.
whitetail and just the story of it was super cool. And, I was super stoked, man. Like I couldn't have done it without, our friend Mike. And it was just super cool to share that experience, obviously with my favorite, best hunting partner, my dad. And yeah, man. So that was day 2. And so we had
That
3 days
awesome.
left. The sense, the moment of relief, I was so happy I was able to get it done. And definitely looking forward to having some whitetail as well. But yeah, man, it just happened so fast. It was definitely a great time.
I mean, it's so good that you were ready. And I know that that's so minor, but having your bow accessible and an arrow knocked, even when you're not expecting it, I mean, I could only venture to guess because I've been there myself that if this were you a couple of years ago, that probably wouldn't have been the case, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that. I would have just kind of had it laying down. But I know things can happen after more and more time in the field. It's just no matter what you're doing, when you're doing it, just always be ready. And that was my biggest takeaway from that hunt is just, I, I was in just a spot where no whitetail hunter would have thought I would have gotten a shot off probably. And sure as heck I did. Um, so yeah, man, just always being ready is going to be something I remember. And that's going to be something that I won't forget.
Yeah, that's cool. This is a maybe a weird question, but I kept thinking of it as you were talking about hunting different stands and this and that and the other thing. And, this is a new area to you. How was Mike telling you where to go or showing you where to go? Was he just giving you like, hey, here's an Onyx waypoint. There's a tree stand here. Was he taking you to a tree stand? Because like, especially in the morning when you're going in the dark, what was that like practically?
Yeah, that's funny you said that because my dad and I were talking about it on the last day. So we ended up hunting through, and my dad he wasn't able to get one. We did have a buck come in, and it was super close. Just didn't get a shot opportunity from the blind. Mike ended up getting a really nice one on the last evening, but so on the last morning before we packed up and left in the afternoon, we hiked through, and it's pitch black, and he doesn't have his Onyx or anything, and just takes us right to the stand. But when we were driving back, my dad's like, "Do you realize like he never pulled out his Onyx or anything like that when he was taking each and every one of us to the blind?" I'm like, dude, like he just knows this place like the back of his hand. He's hunted it for years and years and years, and has just grown like that's his baby. He knows this area like the back of his hand. So I mean, he would basically walk us all the way up to about the stand, and then 50 yards from the stand, he'd point at it and say, there's the stand, and good luck. And then he'd go and go do his thing. So yeah, it was cool. I know I doubt he's going to listen to this podcast. He's not a big podcaster or social media guy, but
I'm
I have
offended,
to say,
Mike. I'm
I
sure.
just have to say thank you to him because, bringing somebody new or two people new into like their area and their hunt is definitely something difficult. Because I know for my dad and I, taking people to a spot is definitely sacred, and you don't want somebody to spread information or anything like that, which I'm definitely not doing. But yeah, man, I can't thank him enough. But I definitely want to go again. That's for sure. I'm hooked. Whitetail hunting is completely different than anything else I've done, and it's a good time for sure.
Very, very cool. Was there any other beside, I mean, something you didn't mention of like takeaways, whether that was lessons learned, just the practicalities of being in a tree stand, any like gear stuff you noticed that was different from a whitetail perspective, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few things. I also do want to say I can't name drop just because I'd have to spend like 10 minutes on my email looking. But I did have a few people actually shoot me a couple emails directly to me, so I just want to say thank you.
Oh, cool.
A couple of them were, yeah, it was really cool. Like a couple of them were just whitetail hunters who basically were giving me advice of like, hey, try this, try that. One guy talked about like an electronic hand warmer instead of like the little buddies. And
Yeah.
then, I just got a definitely a good amount of people who sent me emails just saying good luck and, here's what I would do and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you to those guys. Sorry, I can't name drop, or else, like I said, I'd be here for 15 minutes looking at the emails. But, as far as that, I mean, or as gear and takeaways, I would say gear, man, you just got to be warm. So finding something that keeps you warm is, especially in the feet area. Like I just wore like the insulated muck boots, or sorry, lacrosse boots, like the 1600 Thinsulate. Those things kept me warm and toasty. Um, you know, big jackets that I'm definitely not used to carrying, like in the backcountry. So I mean, that's really it. Just making sure you have warm clothing.
Yeah.
I was definitely
Sorry,
go
this made
ahead.
me think of it. What pack did you
Yeah,
take?
I took
What
the
pack size?
2200.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something that I talk to. I when I talk to people all the time, I never did before have, hands-on experience about, whitetail hunting with our packs or anything like that. And I know you have, so I've just taken your advice from it. And then obviously a lot of our other, guys that we work with who take our packs in the stand. But this was great because I was able to use the 2200, and I, mounted a little screw into the tree and put my pack there. And the 2200 was great just because of that U-shaped zipper. And I love
Hmm.
that, that new integrated lid pocket that we have. So it just kept things handy. I tried to be as quiet as possible, so eating food wasn't as easy because I didn't want to make any crinkle noises or anything like that. But like grabbing like a beanie or gloves, just quick items like that was definitely handy with the 2200.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
so that
sorry,
was
food made me think of something else. If you
what's
have
that?
like, well, if for whitetail hunting, because you said it noisy, like if you have super crunchy packaging, repackaging that stuff into like a Ziploc, or even I've like gone crazy before and just wrap stuff in paper towels.
Yeah.
That's a tiny little tip. But things like, especially something like a bar, right? Like a granola bar, and then especially as those wrappers get cold, they're so stinking loud.
Yeah.
So something that I've done in the past is just like wrap that stuff up in paper towel like that morning or something, and it's a lot quieter to get access to food.
Yeah. I swear the sound is amplified like 10 times when you're up in
Yeah,
the stand and it's quiet, it's freezing. Cause
yeah,
I definitely pack just good junk food. And I wouldn't say junk food, but just snacks that I just love. So I was having like a fruit roll up or whatever, just something that was nice, but those wrappers just got super loud.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I definitely will take that advice next time I go out, just rewrapping stuff and putting it in something a little bit quieter. One thing I do want to say, just another shout out. I know you're friends with him, our buddy Judd over at Easton, just for taking care of me, sending some arrows and those sever broadheads, stuff like that. Though that I love my arrow setup. I think they're like 440. Just a great arrow setup. And then my new bow. I'm loving that thing. I'm shooting the new Matthews Phase 4. I turned that down actually 2 turns, just in case, because I shoot 70-pound limbs, but I turned it down just in case, like, man, if I'm in the stand, cold, I've got 4 layers on plus a giant jacket. I want to make sure I'm pulling this thing back without having to yank on it, end up falling out of the stand, or just couldn't pull it back at all. And so that thing that thing was a dream.
Did you
Um,
re-sight in, or did you feel that
I
didn't
did,
matter for those
yeah.
close?
No, I did actually. So when
Okay.
I turned it down, it was 30, 40, 50, and my 50 was my floater when it was maxed out. Turned it down 2 turns. I kid you not. Like, I wouldn't lie about this. When I turned it down 2, it exactly made my 30, my 20. It just took
You just
everything
went
down 10
20, 30,
yards.
40.
Yeah. And I
Dude,
was
that's
like, well,
awesome.
I don't need to. So I mean, I just verified, and everything was 20, 30, 40. And I was like, wow, that was easy. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's about it as far as gear. I mean, it's as long as you have warm clothes, a little bit of food, and um, a safety harness. That's all you need. Um,
Cool.
and then one little other mini thing was the stabilizing binos from Sig. Those are just nice because you can just pull those out and you're just glassing nice. And, if you get a good view of, like a field or something like that, you can kind of put some glass over there. But other than that, it was pretty easy, pretty mellow.
Nice. Yeah, I was curious on the pack going back to that question, and I'm not trying to make a pack commercial, but we just haven't talked much about our packs and whitetail hunting. But you had mentioned a pack, and then you had also mentioned like your big whitetail coat that you're not used to, and that's something that I've definitely, and speaking with customers, have like I don't want to say made them aware of, but just a reminder because like a common scenario is someone will call and they live in the Midwest or out east and they're thinking of a bigger pack for a Western trip, but then they're like, I want something I can whitetail hunt with too. That's not too big. And one is all of our bigger packs do compress well. But the other thing I remind them of, especially based on where they live, it could be different if a guy's in, Georgia versus Minnesota or something. But I try to remind guys like, hey, if you do any later cold weather tree stand hunting, you may actually want that extra space. Not that you want to fill it all the way up, but especially for guys who hike in and they carry like a full bib set or a
Mm-hmm.
really bulky insulation layer, not like a real lightweight down jacket, but like a heavier whitetail coat is something like a 48. It's just not overkill. And I'm not saying you're going to use
No.
all the space, but it does give you that flexibility of like, especially if you're hunting public land and you got a longer hike into a tree stand, you clearly don't want to hike in all your layers. And some of those layers are just bulky. So
Yeah.
it often comes up where a guy's like, oh, I'm interested in, say a 5,000 for this elk trip, but I just think it's way too big or overkill for what I'm doing at home. And that's generally not always the case. So yeah, just want to mention that because we haven't really talked about that much.
For sure. Yeah. And I'll chime in on that. Like when I was going in, I did have a bib set on hand and I wore that first morning. Me personally, now I'm sure there's whitetail guys who again are more comfortable in a stand that can, change into, and add layers or something like that. Me personally, like I'm not doing anything that requires the, more movement
More
than
movement.
the bare minimum. Yeah. On the stand. But yeah, I mean, so I went in, but the bibs that I have a little bit of like, zip so you can ventilate a little bit. But when I was on the evening hunts, it didn't get as cold. And so I had, like my, outer or my whitetail jacket. And I knew that, it fits, if the whitetail jacket can fit in the 2200 and there's a little bit more space, but like if you were doing a bib set, that definitely wouldn't work. You'd probably have to clip something to the outside of the pack. But I mean, the 2200 is still a great pack for the majority of, I'm sure, whitetail hunting. But yeah, I mean, I would
Yeah.
second to what you said is for those guys who are just packing in more gear and, need to kind of layer up, layer down and put stuff in the bag. I think the 5000 is a great choice.
Yeah. That 2200, if you don't need all that big space, I'm not trying to contradict myself, but just to highlight it, what you said about that built-in lid that's super handy from a tree stand. Just the accessibility and like organization of the 2200 is great as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
cool,
man,
man.
that was definitely a cool time. And then I can't stop saying thank yous. I got to say thank you to my old man
I
again,
feel
and
like you're at
just
the Grammys or something. There's so many
I
thank
know
yous in this
I need to work on
episode.
the Grammy speech then because it's definitely all over the place. But I got to say thanks to my pops just for going along and just being thrilled for me. And I was bummed that he wasn't able to get something, but just my dad, his character, he cares about just his kids, so he was just more thrilled than ever that I was able to get something. And um, yeah, that was cool. And then obviously thank you to you and Steve for letting me take off Monday through Wednesday to chase some whitetails. Now I gotta get back to work. Well, right now
Sure, you're
today's Friday,
busy right
so
now at this very moment. So,
yeah, yeah. At this very moment on Monday, I'm sure I'd just be rather podcasting right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm excited, but yeah, man, it was a good time. Bummed, season's over for me. All I had was a whitetail and an elk tag, so um, looking forward to next year. Hopefully, maybe we can all do something as a team next year. That'd be cool. But
yeah,
yeah, man, I think it was a good season so far for EXO. Kind of. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, do you have any other, I don't know, maybe I've already asked you this, any other takeaways from your elk season? I think we debriefed that a little bit, but if you just look back at, since you said your season's over, like if you look back at this season of a whole, is there any other standouts or takeaways besides what we just discussed on this whitetail hunt?
Yeah, I mean,
It doesn't
with
have
elk
to be.
hunting, like, no, I mean, yeah, I think I don't know, I forget what I said on the last podcast. Oh yeah, it was when we were talking about before I went on this trip. Elk season was, we hunted some new country. So I think just hunting new country, you're not as, familiar, obviously, with kind of that area and stuff like that. And you don't know how the elk are kind of acting. But I mean, I mean, I think I hunted 13 or 14 days in September. So we gave it a lot. I had opportunities at some cows the very first weekend. Elk hunting, man. Like, biggest takeaway for that is everything has to be almost perfect for a shot opportunity to be presented when you're elk hunting
Yeah,
with a bow. Just because, like, obviously you want to make the best shot you possibly can. You owe it to the animal, and so you're not going to take like an 80-yard bomb that's kind of, you're like, I don't know about that shot.
marginal.
So yeah, marginal. Yeah, exactly. So my dad and I are definitely very ethical hunters. So, we're always making sure that we're, in the right spot at the right time. So I think that's my biggest takeaway is we just couldn't make it happen. But that's why you call it elk. That's why you call it hunting and not killing. So at the end of the day, we didn't get it done in elk season, but yeah, it just makes you look forward to next year. Thankfully, I'm ending this year with one of the two tags filled, and I can't complain.
Right. I mentioned on the latest Monday Minute, Steve and I are going to do our gear of the year type recap, which we've done the last handful of years, and then encouraged you guys listening to also share a suggestion if you had your gear of the year. I just thought it'd be fun to include you guys in some of what your highlights were from the year. So one, this is just a reminder to do that. Just email us to podcast@exomountgear.com if you have something that really stood out, worked well for you, made a difference, etc. It'd be fun to hear about what your quote unquote gear of the year is. Um, Jake, though, I have you, and I didn't prepare you at all. But do you have a standout? If you had to pick a something or a couple things for your gear of the year suggestion, anything come to mind immediately?
I just thought you were going to invite me to be part of the Stephen Mark Gear of the Year
No, you're
spreadsheet.
doing
I
it
thought that's what
now.
you're. Well, that's not fair because I wasn't prepared.
You're not prepared.
um, no, I mean, as far as, and there's not much new, not many new things
Yeah,
that
that's what's
I can
tough,
think of.
man. I feel like I've said that's the last few years. It's like at the end of the day, the gear of the year, like my goal every year is not to go find the best new everything. My goal is just simply to like, if something's great, I want to keep using it. And then, of course, there's curiosity and opportunities that we get to try new stuff. But sometimes, like, the gear of the year for me isn't something new this year. It's maybe something that I've been using for years, but like got more value of or made more of a difference this year. Because
Right.
yeah, chasing new is silly if you already have stuff that's great.
I do think, and I'd be shocked if this wasn't on your guys' list. So I apologize if I'm just taking this right from under you guys. But yeah, the new thing for me would be the stabilizing binos from SIG. I think those things are the greatest binos on the market right now. They make
How
them in
much
the
did you
12s,
get
the
paid to say
16s.
that?
maybe a free set of SIGs. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I might have a friend or two who works there. No, I mean, honest to goodness, like those things are awesome. I have the 12s. I ran the 16s, but I personally own the 12s, and those things are just unreal. And I've shown a lot of friends those binos, and they're just blown away. Like, no way, this is just ran by a AA battery, really. So that would probably be my number one piece of gear. And then as far as anything else, I mean, yeah, everything's pretty dialed in for me. Bow setup, clothing, things like that. Like a lot of my gear here is honestly stuff that you and Steve talk about. One thing that I was bummed I didn't get to use, but I knew way in advance I wasn't going to, was like my new rifle setup, the chassis and everything like that. But that's something actually that I'm going to usually, like in the wintertime. My dad and I, my grandpa are big. We like to reload in the wintertime and go shoot steel. So that'll be something I'll do. I'll pick back up, is actually shoot my rifle some more and get familiar with that. But I knew I wasn't going to have a rifle tag this year, which was bittersweet. I love archery hunting, but with a new rifle setup, you really want to get out and use it. So that's going to be something I'll do towards the end of this year, but not apply it to hunting. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's that's this the binos though. Those were key for me.
Nice. We're like exact flip-flopping opposites on I'm like so anxious to start shooting my bow again this winter and
Yeah,
just get some reps with arrows because all of my hunts this fall were rifle hunts and I knew that like going out of the gate because I just didn't do anything in September because I had that sheep tag. And so I realized once I got the sheep tag, like, man, I'm not going to have an archery tag this year. So, I just didn't shoot my bow this past year. I shot it just a little bit, but it was like any free time I had when I would normally be shooting and preparing for hunts. Like, yes, I was still preparing for hunts or training or what have you, but I just flat out knew I wasn't going to have an archery tag. So even though I wanted to shoot my bow from an enjoyment perspective, I just had to make the best use of my time of like being quote unquote productive. And none of that included preparing for an archery tag. So I am like really excited to, now that my season's wrapping up, like start shooting the bow again.
yeah, no, that's hilarious. Yeah, you and I are definitely flip flopped. I mean, I love shooting the bow. I mean, bow hunting or shooting is just one of the coolest things. And I mean, hitting steel at 1,000 yards is also great.
They're both pretty
Um,
fun.
it doesn't suck, that's for sure. New bows are coming out. Our new bows have been announced and everything like that. Are you thinking about maybe looking at getting a new one? Or are you kind of pretty set on your Hoyt right now that you're
I
shooting?
love, love, love my Hoyt, but
Yeah,
like we just talked about, I
trying new things.
you try a new thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know. We might have to
Yeah,
just tinker. And part of what, gosh, I'm letting cat out of the bag here. We may be trying some new stuff, partially just to like be able to talk about other experiences and things like that. Because I have been consistent with shooting my Hoyt for a whole bunch of years. And it would be fun to just like see what else is out there and just not even like necessarily to quote unquote change, but just to have like the opportunity to try stuff, talk about it. It'd be fun to do some podcasts, and we're talking about even doing some video stuff on archery setups and comparisons this year. So there's a chance I'll be tinkering with some other
you
stuff. But
got
at the end of the day, I'm also going back to like what I just said about gear of the year. I'd be happy enough to just keep shooting my Hoyt and hunting and but yeah, I love it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
yeah, you have to keep me in the loop on like the archery stuff. I'll definitely want to be in on that. I was thinking about, that I don't think, I mean, I've upgraded probably every other year, and new bows just came out, and I know we were texting about it kind of when some of the new bows just got released like this last week. And I was like thinking about it, but now that I killed the deer just recently with my new bow, which I'm loving, I'm going to wait a little bit, because I'm like,
Yeah,
man, that's just bad luck if you switch. And the other thing is just getting familiar with the bow. Like once you get it
for
all dialed
sure.
in, granted, like the archery industry as a whole, like I know Steve has talked about it and knows more about it than I do, but like, bows are very, very, uh, not a whole lot is changing, sure, brace height changes or speed changes, weight, yada, yada. But, my biggest thing is like, once you get a new bow, you got to go through the process of resighting in, tuning it and everything like that, which is fine. It's great. That time that definitely costs you time. And I think it's just more valuable. Like once you get your bow set up and everything, might as well just spend that time that you would be doing tuning it and paper tuning it and stuff like that, and just taking this bow and shooting it and getting familiar with it and just getting building more and more confidence with that. So that's kind of what my goal is with my bow into next year, is just being dialed with it. So no upgrades for me.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, it's so true. I think I've said this before on the podcast, like years and years ago, and I was on pro staff for a bow company. Is like we would get two new bows every year, and that sounds like, so many guys are like, "Oh, that sounds amazing." And it was at first, and then it became a giant pain in the butt because it was
Sounds like a
like
lot of work.
I was used to this bow and I loved this bow, and sure, this new one's nice, but now I got to set it up and tune it and change it. And yeah, I mean, first world problems. I'm not complaining, and I'm not in that situation anymore. But yeah, having gone through that, it's it's not as fun as it sounds, and it's interesting to me like even with rifles, the journey I've gone in the last 5+ years of getting more in depth, and I don't want to say I'm over that now, but it is drew a lot of parallels to me now that I have gone through so much and so in depth to what I did with archery, of like I wanted to learn everything and tinker with everything and try everything and all that. And I think it's so valuable to do that because you learn a lot. And I did the same thing with rifles. But after doing it with both bows and rifles, now I'm just to the point where it's like, now I just want to simplify. Now I know what I like. Now I know what works. Now I know what isn't worth tinkering and what is worth setting up. And then like you get to the point where you explore all that and then you just kind of like simplify and go, nope, this is it. I'm done. Let's just go hunt. Let's shoot, whether it's bow or rifle, what have you. But the process is valuable. Getting into the weeds on that stuff, you learn a lot and it is valuable.
Absolutely. And that's the fun part of tinkering. I just think there's a balance, time
Yeah.
is everything. So, I think you just, once you balance out the time of tuning and shooting and going hunting, like, then you're good. But
Cool. Well, I guess we technically didn't get to any listener questions today. And we say this is about listener questions. So apologies, but it is a special day. Again, the sale's going on right now. Jake, super excited for
thank
you.
you.
Was fun to hear your story. Congrats. And
Yeah.
we will
Yeah.
be back to answer listener questions. So if you have one, send us an email to podcast@exomtngear.com or look for the link in the show description that says leave a message. And then if you have a pack question during the sale, give us a shout. You'll talk to us. We'll be happy to help steer in the right direction. Thanks as always for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.